Are you the type of individual that wants to become a more of a strategic sourcer, leaning more towards becoming that business partner for your organization? Then if so, here is a little sneak peek of what we've got in store for this episode.
What are the best platforms to source people? Where are we finding those ideal personas or those ideal candidates for a role that we need to fill ahead of doing the actual work? Is for me the way that I think about sourcing in a strategic way. I try to involve hiring managers or stakeholders in the process, the sourcing process from the get-go and as much as possible. I like to involve them in the process in a way that I give them a list of people that I think are great with the basic information that I have, or with no information at all. And I ask them from 1 to 10, or you just give me sometimes it's just give me a yes or no if you think that this person is a fit or not for this role, based on their profile.
Taking us through what works for himself, João speaks about sourcing in a strategic manner and really focuses on giving you some very clear, actionable insights that you can take away from this episode and start implementing with your hiring managers and organizations today. There's lots of different nuances around how people do the sourcing, but coming at it from a strategic element takes a little bit more time at the beginning, but hopefully pays a lot in return at the end of the process with more efficiency, more hires, and ultimately more reputation that you can build for yourself, your career inside the business. So thank you as always for joining, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by a seasoned talent sourcing specialist with years of experience across diverse hiring processes and roles at companies like Humanitech, HelloFresh, and currently Wolt. He's enhanced the art of finding top talent by combining traditional and innovative sourcing techniques, now focusing on strategically hiring for executive positions. This topic should hopefully excite each and every one of us greatly, as it aligns the evolving role that everyone talks about within the talent acquisition field, which basically focuses more towards becoming business partners. The emphasis now is around that strategic hiring element and integrating that into our hiring processes so we can not only advance the organization that we support, but hopefully also grow our own careers by positioning ourselves as what I would say as indispensable partners. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, the senior sourcing specialist with the team at Wolt, João Luzablito. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Eden. Very happy to be here as well. It's actually something, just a quick note before we jump into the actual session. It's actually something that I've been wanting to do for a while. So thank you very much for the invite, and looking forward to it.
No, I appreciate the kind words on that. I mean, obviously, we've gone through a few conversations with this, and I think the topic that you chose around strategic sourcing, it's one that I know you're clearly passionate about, which makes this a lot easier and a lot more exciting. But I also think, and I emphasize that element of moving into business partners, a lot of the talent community are talking about it, and a lot of the talent community want it. But I think sometimes it's difficult to understand how do we do it, and I think the strategic side is what a lot of people probably are missing from their recruitment efforts. So I'm really interested in kind of uncovering that with you. Before we get there, the teaser question, as it were. So from your perspective, João, what makes a high performing talent team?
I think first things first, I feel that that's a little bit subjective, because obviously it will depend on the organization that you're in. That's my first thought. But a high performing team for me would be a team that it's actually not only delivering on the numbers that they're supposed to deliver, they are performing, as the word says, but at the same time, they're thinking strategically, as a topic for this session as well. I think it's a good way to put it in. Not only performing well, hitting those targets, but also thinking in a strategic way that makes it easier or more efficient for us as a team to achieve those targets. So I think it's a combination of both, of the hard work, grinding it, so to speak, and also thinking a little bit ahead and ahead of time, and understanding if I want to get to point C, what is the direction that I need to go through in order to make it faster, so faster or more efficient and more effective.
So that blend between short-term vision of we've got these jobs to fill, let's go do it and performing at that element, but also that long-term vision of understanding, okay, what's coming around the corner, how can we better improve the business, how can we better improve our function? So it's that blend. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I've said the word strategic a few times. You've said the word strategic a few times. We're only a few minutes into the episode. So let's set the scene for anyone that's listening. When you talk about sourcing and being strategic in your sourcing, what do you exactly mean?
So thinking of things like what are the best platforms to source people? Where are we finding those ideal personas or those ideal candidates for a role that we need to fill ahead of doing the actual work is, for me, the way that I think about sourcing in a strategic way. And I try to separate things a little bit even before starting to search for profiles and finding them. Right, I try to understand what are the requirements or the criteria that would make a great candidate go through the line until the end of the process, eventually getting an offer and being hired. Mm-hmm. But also understanding from the hiring teams or the stakeholders, particularly, what are where would these ideal profiles sit, right? Obviously, it's just a starting point. The sourcing is all about iterating your search and iterating the way that you're doing it. But combining this kind of information from a first place would definitely help you to be more strategic and, obviously, by consequence, more efficient, and hopefully closing the role as fast as possible, or finding the right candidate as fast as possible in order to close the role. So I would combine those two things: the understanding what are we looking for and where would these people be, and then also, and at the same time, gathering all the insights from your hiring managers or your stakeholders when it comes to these positions. Everyone has their own feelings about it or their own opinion about it, where the candidates should be. But kind of mixing it up a little bit and combining those two parts, for me, it's where I think the strategic part comes in. Obviously, just to finish up the answer to this question, it doesn't end. The process doesn't end when you close the role for that specific position, right? There's the third part, which I think is also one of the most important ones, is how do you make sure that the people that you have engaged with in the past during the initial part of the process are still warm for the future, because you never know what's going to happen. Maybe you'll have a similar role in the future that people that didn't actually make it through the whole hiring process could be a great fit. And the team that interviewed them really loved them. So it's also about keeping in mind the people that you have engaged with in the past and building your own kind of talent pipeline, let's put it this way, so you can be faster and quicker in the next time that you're actually having to source for a similar role, or even it can be slightly different, but with certain commonalities between them.
You also never know, for example, and hopefully this doesn't happen, but it happened literally last week with somebody that reached out to us for support, where they had made a hire, waited the notice period, and then 2 days before the start date, the person said, I'm no longer joining. And they've had to start completely from scratch again because they didn't do the talent pool development. They didn't do the nurturing period for 3 months. And now it's a cold search. These people, they're not engaging anymore. How does this kind of approach do you feel differ from what talent teams are usually doing?
That's a good question, and I have a very controversial opinion about that. I
I like
feel that
controversial. It's fine.
um, I feel that, especially since I'm in the industry, I feel that we're doing things quite reactively and not proactively, right? And that's where, for me at least, this talent pipelining comes in, and keeping people that you have engaged with warm kicks in as well. I think we're very reactive. We get a role, okay, we have to source for this role, and then we forget about everything when the role is closed, and we don't really care about what happened with the candidates that you have spoke with, right? I had a manager in the past that kind of changed my perspective on this a little bit, and it's something so basic and so simple that when I heard this for the first time, I thought, why didn't I ever think about this, or why we as a team are not taking this to a next level? And the question, or the thing that this manager told me was, how many times you receive a rejection email or message from a recruiter that says, let's keep in touch for the future. We'll be sure to reach out again if there's a role that matches your experience, right? And after you have that question, you start thinking, how many times was I rejected in the past and never heard again from those recruiters, right?
Yeah.
And that for me was the break point, so to speak. I don't want to, maybe it's a little bit harsh, but the turning point when I started looking at this in a different way. And at least for the people that I've sourced throughout the years, I try to engage with them in one way or another. If it's just liking a post that they make on LinkedIn, or sending out a message when they get into the new role, hey, congrats for that. Let me know if you're willing to speak. I would love to chat about your experience in company X or Z. And let's essentially keep in touch, because especially in executive, and that's the part where I'm focusing on right now, executive people or director plus people are at the point of this career, and we talked about this also in the previously, are at the point of their career where, even if they're not open to change roles for whatever reason, everyone has their reasons, I noticed that they are way more open to the possibility of changing jobs. They want to see eventually what is out there, what a company where I'm working right now at Wolt, for example, what can offer them that is different for their career, for their career path. And that's one of the things that I like the most about executive sourcing in executive in an executive function, because it gives you it gives you a little bit of pleasure, so to speak, because it's very interesting to speak with people that come from very different backgrounds and very different industries and companies, like big companies, smaller companies. But there's always this trend between them that, yeah, let's chat. Why not? In the end, it's 10, 15 minutes of my time that we are not wasting, but getting to know each other. And then we can eventually find the common ground. I think we're a little bit alike, Eden. I'm not going to be on a call hearing what you say and your not demands, but the needs or your expectations for the future, and tell you, no, this is exactly what we can offer. Then at the end, we can't even offer you or match whatever you're making right now, or the conditions that you're working in right now, right? So why am I going to put a candidate into process that I'm not sure if we're going to be able to close, or we are too far apart to make it work, right? I prefer to be completely transparent and honest from the beginning. But to go back just a couple of words, it's very interesting to engage with these people, because typically they're quite open to understand what we as a company, or we as an organization, we can offer them to make them evolve in their career.
Yeah, I think that transparency part, I think that goes hand in hand with, strategic hiring in general, yeah, you can talk about where do these people sit, being a bit more proactive in that side. I 100% agree. But the bit I love the most about it is that talent pool nurturing. Because, I mean,
Yeah,
coming from the external side, I mean, this is what we've done for a decade plus. You go into a niche vertical and you talent pool development. And that's the reason why an agency is there when internal teams cannot find a relevant tool, a relevant
yeah,
skill set, sorry, because that's what I spend day in, day out doing it. Um, but that strategic side is being transparent to say, look, this job isn't for you. Totally fine. It's not for you. I can tell you why this, and this, but then being open enough to say it and then to come back to them when something is open. So I've started
yeah,
doing that.
exactly.
I think the last maybe 3.5 years, I've started to switch how I take these calls with people. And I used to be very reactive. Get a job, go to the network, go, 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 go. Obviously, the talent pool development was there, but I was never nurturing as well as I am now. I mean, I'll put my hand up and say that. But now it's if I go back to somebody, usually I have a very high response rate. Like 80, 90% of my first degree network responds to me if I've spoken to them in the last
Yeah,
2 years, 3 years now, because I always say the same thing to them. It's if my name comes up, especially if I've rejected them on that call, and I always reject them if they're not right on the call, and I'll give them a valid reason. Again, it's not right. But I always say if my name comes up, doesn't matter what time of year it is, just have a call with me. Because
yeah,
at that point, I think I've got something that's a perfect match for you because you've told me what you want. Again, it's a hell of a lot easier for me because I'm an external consultant and they do tell me a lot more in that first call, I believe.
yeah,
And the response rate is through the roof. Every quarter, my calendar is blocked out with loads of calls with people and just having updates, having catch ups. And that's the talent pool development. I think I agree. A lot of teams are missing. I think that's
yeah.
the strategic side that you've kind of started to nail down.
That's I agree absolutely, and you touched the point that I think it's very relevant and something that I try to improve on every time that I speak with a candidate. It's something that it's related to candidate experience, but taking candidate experience more like as a customer experience approach. Uh, there's a saying in marketing that you make one customer happy and they will tell another person,
Mm-hmm.
but you make one customer unhappy and they will tell 10 different ones.
Yeah.
So how can you leave that conversation with a good impression, making a good candidate experience? And that for me relies a lot on understanding the expectations from the candidate, right? What are your needs, your expectations? What are you looking for if you're changing a job? I'm not even saying that. I'm not trying to convince you that this is a job for you. I approach you for a reason, right? I think I think you're a great match, but there's two parts to the conversation. And if you're not, if I know that I can't match your expectations, maybe it's not the right time for us to proceed. But as you said, in 6 months from now, I have a similar role or a role that fits perfectly that specific profile. Then I can go back to them and say, hey, we spoke about a different role in the past. It was not the right time for this and that reason. Now we have this. What do you think? Then we can resume the conversation, get back to the conversation and understand, okay, it makes sense to move forward now or not.
Super powerful as well. If in that reconnection or re-engagement, you can cherry drop something that you spoke about in that formal
Yeah.
conversation, even if it was 6 months ago. And I think some of the examples that I've kind of can think of, and I put these in as diary notes again in my calendar, was like someone's expecting a baby, someone's birthday,
Yeah.
someone ran a marathon, and I always kind of cherry drop these bits and pieces, and they sit there and go, "Holy shit, like you did listen." And then as soon as
Yeah.
you have that, they're so receptive to you. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
if it's at this company, and of course, you want to have a long-term prosperous career in your current business. Of course you do. You're not going to be there forever. So then when you move on, the opportunity might be better suited for you and that person at that point. Um, Obviously there is a fine balance, I think, between strategic hiring and because strategic hiring, I think, it can be a lot slower before you
Mm-hmm.
start the
Yeah.
process because you do need a bit more thinking time. But of course, you need to be efficient in your sourcing approach. And sometimes, we've got tight deadlines, we haven't got the resources to find, particular profiles, maybe budgeting reasons, headcount, time, biggest one, time. So how can, I guess, we as talent professionals balance these elements, being strategic but efficient?
Yeah. My way of doing things, and I mean, obviously, I hope that a lot of people would listen to this podcast, and they take some of this to their own lines of work. But one of the things that I always try to say to other sources that I work with is that, or even recruiters that I partner with for roles, is that my way of working might not work for you, right? I know how I like to work, and I know how I can work well, but I'm not gonna try to say this is the way that you should do things, because otherwise you're not gonna achieve your results. You need to find a balance, right? Or adapt things from one person and the other person, and understanding what works for you or not. One of the things that I try to do to balance it out, the strategic side of things, and also be efficient, is I try to involve hiring managers or stakeholders in the process, the sourcing process, from the get-go, and as much as possible. Sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes you need to go ahead and do it yourself because you didn't get a lot of information, and you know that at an executive level, you're dealing basically with VPs, C-level, senior directors, depending on the level of the position that you're working on, right? But these people usually don't have a lot of time, or they have a very small attention span. So how can you hook them with the things that you're requesting from them? And I always try to bring them and be part of the process. One of the things that I like to do, and again, for high volume roles, probably this is not the best way to approach it, because you have thousands or hundreds of thousands of profiles that you can approach, and eventually you will get people in process. But for more niche roles, I like to involve them in the process in a way that I give them a list of people that I think are great, with the basic information that I have, or with no information at all. And I ask them from 1 to 10, or you just give me sometimes it's just give me a yes or no if you think that this person is a fit or not for this role, based on their profile. And typically, even if I just ask for a yes or no answer, they give me a one-liner on why this person is or is not a fit for that particular role. And that's something that I try to leverage as much as possible.
Just to dig into that, sorry. So say, I don't know, you're hiring a director of engineering, right? You speak to the hiring manager, you take the requirement, you'd go away and find a couple of people, but you won't necessarily engage with those people. You'll just find a couple of names, okay, and then you use whatever source. You bring that list back to the hiring manager and say, can you give me some feedback before you start the process formally, just to see, did you understand, and to iron out any kinks in the process, and just to get their thought process.
Yes, correct. So sometimes I tend to be way faster than that and go ahead even without any information, just knowing the job title or the team that they're going to be working on.
Okay, I don't always
gives me
recommend
already
that one, but if it works, it works for
yeah,
you.
Definitely. For me, obviously, I'm not expecting to bring a list of people to a hiring manager and get like 100% of those people that I found to be exactly aligned with the role that we are hiring for, right? Sometimes it happens. It happened to me once. I think it was a very short list, and it was one of the quickest hiring processes I've been part of. Maybe also because the hiring manager was quite new to the company, so they wanted to be involved and really involved. The feedback was super fast.
So what was the time frame, start to finish?
Yeah, exactly. You asked how long? Sorry.
How long was the time frame, start to finish?
I think so. This was a director role, and I think the whole process from the role was open to we closed it was around 2 months, which is quite short for a director position or above. Usually, as you said, it can be longer, right? Because notice periods. And this person actually started in 2 months, so it was spot on. And I remember that case because we put on the job, we published the role, we got a bunch of applications. I sourced 20 people. I think 17 out of 20 people, the hiring manager really liked. And we got 3 offers out, and we put down the job as well after that because the response rate was incredible, like 85% or something. Almost everyone replied to me after the first message. And we got 3 offers out out of these 20 people that I've sourced, and we eventually hired one of them. So it was one of the best experiences that I had, and the fastest ones as well, which was quite cool. But sometimes it's not like that, right? And to go back to your question, and I was saying that sometimes I'm faster than that, even with the job title or the team. I can go around and understand what is out there. But obviously, I would recommend to have at least a little bit of information or get some information from your hiring manager before jumping into that, and that's where the efficiency part comes in, right? If you're doing things without the information, it's more likely that you're gonna get some things wrong.
Mhm.
It can be that you're finding the right profiles as well, but the likelihood of you getting the whole list wrong is higher. So I tend to wait a little. Most of the times I tend to wait and get some information before I go in. Then I rather quickly I prepare a list of up to 20 people. I don't like to put too many because then I know that the hiring manager is not going to go through 50 profiles at once. So 20 people is probably the maximum that I would share. I would request feedback. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's shorter. But when it's quite fast, then I can understand if I'm aligned with what they're looking for, or my search was aligned, and iterate and tweak it a little bit so we can find profiles that are more in line with that search. But I try to keep the relationship quite close. Not like I need you to do this, otherwise I'm not going to source anymore. But it's more like, let's make it work between us, because I'm here to partner with you and find you the best candidate possible. But I can only do that if you give me or feed me the information that I need to go ahead and find those relevant profiles.
I think that is the biggest difference between what I see in successful teams and non-successful teams, is that that understanding between hiring manager and talent is that it's that partnership element, and not just taking the talent team as a resource that's to be used and abused and just go find me people. It doesn't work like that. Obviously,
and I think
each company.
Just one more thing, and I think that's also where the proactive part comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're just waiting for the information and do the thing, and okay, I've done my part, now it's for the recruiter to handle everything, or something like that, then you're just being reactive. And I prefer to be more proactive, because at least not only gives me the opportunity to engage with these people and understanding what the roles are about in a little bit more detail, but I think the process is also smoother because you're being more targeted. And that's the whole idea of partnering with the sourcer, is not to approach 300 people at once.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, I had a colleague in the past that would tell me, we only need one candidate. So, which is kind of utopic, but it is what it
your
is,
colleague
right?
is smart. That's what I say all the time at the moment. You only need one. Unless you're hiring more than one position in the same company, then you need more.
Mm-hmm.
But you only need one. And I have that mantra at the moment to my team's probably annoyance, because I do believe it's right. Sometimes you don't need to send 20. You don't even need to send 3. You can just send 1. But that one person is the person that the hiring manager sees. But behind the scenes, you've screened out 50 people, and you've messaged 200 people, and you've gone through 1,000 people, whatever. But you've done the screening process, and that's what you're paid for. That's what I'm paid for. And the hiring manager sees the best of the best, or the person that you think is the exact match. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Obviously, each team has its own variant of high quality, or whatever they feel is needed in the team. In your, I guess, your pre or not necessarily your pre-screening, but your screening process. So before you start the search, how are you determining what high quality means for that hiring manager for your company that you're in at the moment? How are you kind of going through that process?
Oh, I think that's a tough one, huh? That's a very, I think, especially because I think it's a very subjective topic, right? But if we're talking about sourcing, how would I gather the information to understand what a high quality candidate is? There is one particular thing that for me it's a good indication that this candidate is could be of a high quality. Is not for sure, right? Because on paper someone can look really good, and you probably had the same experience as me throughout the years. That sometimes someone looks like perfect on paper, and then you speak with them, and you're like, this is not as good as I thought it would be. And then you have exactly the opposite. Someone without talking about LinkedIn, and I'm not trying to advertise anything, but a LinkedIn profile, for example, you look at it and it's completely empty, and you just say working with this job title at this organization, and you look at the profile. Okay, considering the progression and the career development looks good, but I don't have too much to go on. But when you speak with those people, sometimes it's just like, wow, they just don't bother to update their LinkedIn profiles, but they actually know what they're talking about, and they know their stuff. So for me, this criteria of understanding what kind of challenges this position will be solving in an organization is a very good indication for me to understand what a high quality candidate is. If I find someone that is in a similar kind of size of organization, in a similar industry with kind of a similar business problems or business challenges, and I find someone that has a similar experience, I can't say for sure, obviously, but I can tell that there would be a high likelihood of that person would be a high quality candidate. Again, it's not for sure, but for me, that's the one thing that I try to get as much information on from the get-go, is what type of challenges is this position, will this position solve in your organization specifically?
Yeah. I think that one's super important, because I think high quality director for your current company is going to be different to what a high quality senior IC is going to be. Again, because of the challenge element. And I think having that overarching understanding of what does the challenges mean, and having that discussion with the hiring manager to pinpoint that as much as possible gives you much more of a clear idea. So say, for example, and this I guess comes back down to that starting of the searching process, you've got a requirement, you understand a little bit about what's happening, you're going to go and do that kind of initial 20. Are you trying to find people specifically in similar companies, similar industries? Is that like the go-to first?
That's a good question. And again, repeating again what I said a few minutes ago, the way that I do things is not like the right for everyone, or I'm not saying that it's the right one. It's just the way that I like to do things. And for me, it has been working throughout the years as well. But yeah, to answer your question directly, yes, I try to bring in or showcase a couple of profiles or a list of profiles that match exactly those initial criteria, because it's a starting point, right? I'm not saying that we're going to hire someone from that list, or even I'm not saying that we're going to get those people in process, because recruitment and sourcing, especially, it's you send out a message, but it's on the candidate side to decide if they're willing to jump in or not. But yeah, I try to take a kind of a pyramid approach. I start from the top, where I'm very targeted. Sometimes my search is return 50 people, And I'm like, this is not a lot. And I start, I don't panic, but it's like, okay, this is not a lot. Maybe I've done something wrong, or I didn't use the keywords the right way, or I filtered it the wrong way, or whatever. But I try to get an understanding. If I input everything at once, what are the results that it's going to return to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously I iterate a little bit. What if I take out this one? What if I include something or different wording? And it goes like a pyramid, right? You start from a pool of 50 people, and then 100, 200, and so on and so on and so on. So that's usually my approach. And obviously I try to target those companies where we feel as an organization that we're going to have the best candidates for that position, the industries. And I have actually a very good example of this, a role in the past that I was working on that was quite challenging for me to bring people in the process, because it's generally in executive, most roles are quite niche in terms of the talent pool size. But this role was kind of funneled a little bit, because one very specific part of marketing that needed to be taken care of. And obviously I took the same approach. I was searching for, okay, we are usually hiring from these companies, and we know that people that are coming from these particular industries or these particular companies are performing quite well during the process. So let's start with that. But one of the things that I quickly noticed is that the scope was so narrow for some of these folks that they were either not interested or it was not for them. So I once, and in the process of this, it was a very long role actually. In the process of this, I once catched the hiring manager in the office. And I think it was the first time that we actually met in person. And it was a funny conversation, because I started speaking with him, and he didn't recognize who I was. And then I introduced myself. And then I think so. And then he remembered, and he was like, thank you very much for all the work that you've been doing. And we had like a 10-minute conversation in between two meetings that they had. And I asked him a simple question. What would be an industry that we haven't tapped in yet that you think could bring us relevant candidates? And he gave me an answer that it was so unexpected, because typically this industry is quite slow moving in a way, which is telecom.
Got to be banking or I was going to say banking or insurance. So I was going to go with. Fair enough. Telecom. Yeah, also
telecommunications. And I was like, and I was like, okay, interesting. I would never think of that. And I asked, why does he think this industry is a good place to go? And he said, well, think of companies that provide your cable or your phone or your internet connection at home. Most of the business relies on reactivations. And it was a reactivations kind of position, reactivating customers to bring back to the customer, to the platform. So, and all of a sudden it clicked to me. That makes total sense. And I never thought of it, because my first thought was, this is quite slow moving. It's not very, very fast paced, right? So I would never think about sourcing or finding people in those industries. And we ended up not hiring someone from that industry specifically, but it gave us a bunch of new candidates for us to process and to go through the interviews. And it was a kind of a eye opener for me, because we tend to be very focused or very biased, so to speak, that we should only go for these companies because we know that they work. But then we are leaving out a whole bunch of people that could be a great fit, and we're just not giving them the opportunity to be in process because we're not actively approaching them. Yeah. So that's the way that I try to do things, and start from the top, very niche, very small talent pool or result pool, and then open it up and see what you can find. Sometimes what happens a lot is that sometimes you just change the keywords all of a sudden, and then you have a result popping out that is exactly what you're looking for that you never found before. So that's just the way that I do things. Again, not trying to teach anyone anything. It works for me. So if anyone that is listening wants to give it a try, go ahead and let me know how it goes.
I like the fact as well that your company that you worked at clearly proactive in identifying industries, similar organizations. Not a lot of businesses are doing this as
Yeah.
well as they should. And that's also part of the thing that I find quite interesting when you speak to it's mostly smaller companies thinking, okay, where would you like to hire from? Like,
Yeah.
regardless of the money, regardless of no limitations, who would you like to hire, first of all? And usually I get a name, maybe a name or two. That's priority number one. And then we find out why. And then the next question is, okay, what companies, what industries? And we kind of filter it that way. And then because I'm me, I always like to throw a wild card in there, completely left field. They weren't expecting it. Could be a completely different industry. It could be actually a slightly different stack, whatever. And just to see how they respond. And, I always start the process with hiring managers saying, look, you're going to look at some of these profiles and think, what the fuck am I doing? Trust the
Yeah.
process. I just need to know where the parameters are that you're sitting there going, okay, still open. Okay, Aiden, definitely not interested in that type of person because of this background in terms of their experience, industry, blah, blah. And then you know where the line is. Once you identify the line, there's usually quite a lot to play with. I think obviously with internal side, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you can build that rapport a hell of a lot quicker because you're probably working with the same type of people over and over again, the same managers over
Yeah.
again. Whereas obviously with me, sometimes not always the case. So I need to find that line quicker. So it's usually within the first few profiles I need to try and identify it. Joe, if it's cool for you, there's one final question I have, and then obviously we'll hop off. But we were discussing this is why I want to bring it up as the last point. We were discussing before aligning the sourcing strategies and the talent acquisition strategies towards the business, so the overarching business. So can you explain, because I found this part very interesting from my perspective when you told me about it, but can you explain to me what you mean by aligning TA services with talent acquisition strategy?
Okay. I think that's a very big topic. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, that it's a very big topic. But
You've only got a few minutes, I apologize.
no, it's fine. I'm just trying to to wrap things up on my mind in a good way. I don't want to butcher anything that might sound wrong or inaccurate or just honestly stupid, to be honest.
There's no such thing as
um,
stupidity.
yeah,
There's always
no, that's
learning.
that's actually true. That's actually true. At some point I had a manager that told me, well, if you have a question, just put it out there, because it's very likely that someone else also has the question, as the same question mark on their mind. And that's also a thing that I like about sourcing, that question everything and anything, and then you'll see what comes out of it. I think the alignment between TA and the business itself, and the strategies that you're applying to find the right candidates is it can move a little bit, because what we would be looking at hiring today might be different from 6 months from now, right?
Mm.
Not only in terms of the type of roles, but also the positions or the level of those roles. But taking, for example, the type of roles, let's say that we have a huge need for engineers, for example. We are ramping up the platform or the application that we are developing, and we need to go go ahead and hire a bunch of engineers to help us bring the company and the business to the next level. I think that's where aligning with the business and aligning the strategy with the business get together, because it's completely different than being hiring for finance or people, so to speak, or talent people. The the approach needs to be different. The the strategy to find those people that needs to be different as well, because you're probably going to find good people from both sides in the same companies, right? But are you actually maximizing your efforts of finding the most amount of high quality people the same way? Probably not. That's where the strategy needs to be different, and the same happens with executive people. Although I think it's a trend in this kind of startup, scale-up environments where that hiring managers, they really would like to have someone from Fang joining the business, because they have the complexity. They worked with the complexity. They worked with this in scale and so on. No matter what the field that we're hiring for, or that these people have on their background, right? But this is a kind of a common trend across businesses, tech businesses, at least. But
I do get asked that quite a lot. I won't lie, and from smaller companies. And this isn't to discredit the smaller companies by any means, because some of their ideas are phenomenal. But then my question back
yeah,
to them is, are you good enough to hire that person? Is
yeah,
your product stable enough? Can you offer them the salary or the package? Can you actually attract somebody? And we're in Berlin, right? So we get AWS. I mean, pre the on-site adjustment, when we were hybrid, is like, my question to you is, can you truly attract someone that I
yeah,
know for a fact is on six figures with a phenomenal stock package at AWS to your 3-person startup? If you can, great. I'll do what I can to make it happen. But that's the question you have to really ask yourself. You want the best of the best, but are you able to bring the best of the best in yet? Outside of a
yeah,
biased
exactly.
perspective that your product is the best on the market, because as a founder, of course, you need to believe that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that on the sourcing side, I think that's probably the thing that I have the most issues with when hiring managers. I tend to ask this question every time that I kick off a role with a hiring manager. What is the ideal company that you would like this person to come from? And the answer is usually the same. Thank because of the reasons that I just said: the complexity, the scale that they're working. And to go back to something that you also said, is that yes, I can probably bring you some people that are from those environments, right? And they're probably going to be very, very good. But are you willing to go above and beyond to match what they're looking for? And that's where the candidate experience comes in, right? The understanding the expectations of those people, or and at the same time always get in a wild card that comes from a completely unrelated company or an unrelated industry, just at least to get the feeling if that works, if that's what you're looking for or not, right? Sometimes they're very good that they end up getting hired instead of the Fang folks, but that for some reason they join these big tech companies, and they progress throughout their lives there, and they have the complexity and the scale to be a good value, to be of great value to your organization. But it's about that compromise. You want people from Airbnb, but are you willing to move them from San Francisco to Berlin, for example, or are you willing to match their compensation? Because pretty sure that these people are not going to be at the same level of compensation that executives are in Berlin.
Yeah. You've
So
also then got the
it's
bias element you touched upon earlier, sat in there as well. And as you're
yeah,
talking, I'm thinking of this as well, is maybe an easy way to get around it is showing them 2 or 3 profiles, some from these FANG related companies and some aren't, but taking the company off profile completely
yeah,
and just having the core skills, and then showing them, okay, you selected this one, but not these two, but this one's actually from, I don't know, industry A, and these two are from the FANG companies. So mitigating that bias as much as possible. But yeah,
yeah. And
sorry, I just had that thought
just
process.
one final thought. One final thought about that is that it's about the culture, right? Because every company has their own culture, and people or I speak for myself here. I think a lot of people also do the same, but I'm just speaking for myself. I would never. I think I would never accept an offer from a company that during the when the hiring process happens, that I don't have a good feeling about it, right? Of the culture, of the way that people speak to you, interact with you during the interview process. And that's also something that needs to be aligned between TA and the business, is get that question out there to the hiring manager. Do you really want someone from this kind of environment or culture? And I'm not saying I'm not talking about the background where they're from and so on. I'm just speaking specifically about the company culture, right? Very fast paced, very, very performance driven. I'm not saying that performance is not important. Obviously, it is. Otherwise, companies would go bankrupt quite easily. But is this the kind of environment or company culture that you want to embed into your organization to take it to the next level? Because you're compromising other things, right? You're hiring this person that comes from this specific company, but what effect will that have in your employees or the people that are reporting to that person? So I think it's something that TA should be probably asking more and get that out there, because although these are great people, for sure, I have no doubt of that. Sometimes there are specific things or smaller things that can break everything.
And on that, we'll finish. But I appreciate you spending some time and going through this. If someone wanted to pick up the conversation further with you, understand a bit more about your background, and ultimately, pick your brain further, where's the best place that they can find you?
Yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me a message, and I'm always, one of the things that I've learned in sourcing is that I hate when people don't reply to you, because sometimes a no is a no, right? At least I know that you're not interested. So one of the things that I always try to do, if it's someone is trying to poach me or just for a conversation, I always try to give back an answer and say, hey, thanks for the message, but I'm not interested, or let's pick it up, have a chat at some point. So
Now
LinkedIn is the best option.
This is the true test. So if anyone wants to connect with you, I'll put your LinkedIn into the description on this. And now I'm going to ask you in a couple of months' time, how many people responded to you, or how many people did you respond to? So let's see. But I appreciate, like I
what
said,
is the
you
response rate?
once again taking time and kind of going through this, because I do genuinely believe the strategic hiring element. If we can nail this down as an industry, that is just going to leapfrog so many people's careers into, as I said, that business partner element. So thank you so much for sharing kind of your background, your stories, and giving us some insights and information, to at least for people to go away with and try. So thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. It was a pleasure as well. Thanks for inviting me again.
No worries. Bye bye.
Bye bye.